Welcome back, everyone, to One Earth Live. We're going to introduce our next guest, Dr. Alejandro Junger, an incredible man who's devoted his life to wellness, and his journey is incredible. He had his own personal breakdown and then had amazing breakthrough. And he's a cardiologist that is also the founder of the CLEAN program. Welcome, Dr. Alejandro, to One Earth Live. Great to have you here.
Great to be here with you, Chris.
So I'd like you to share a little bit to our global audience today about your personal journey and what led you to become one of these leading experts in the world on detoxification.
I was born in Uruguay in South America 56 years ago. And at that time, Uruguay was very simple. There were no supermarkets. We used to go to the farmer's market with my father, and he even knew the market people that grow the people that grew the food that we bought, right? And my mother used to take all day to prepare a meal. And then there I grew up, a very, very healthy life by default. Then I went to medical school because I really wanted to help people. And after medical school, as soon as I graduated, I moved to New York to do my internship, residency in internal medicine, and fellowship in cardiology. And the fast pace, the drastic change in lifestyle from Uruguay to New York, the incredible long hours, sometimes days in a row on call, and eating with no time from the hospital cafeteria or vending machines really made me sick. At the beginning, I just was gaining a lot of weight, but then my digestion started getting difficult. Then my allergies started appearing and getting really bad, to the point that I couldn't function during the day from sneezing and itching. And then, which was probably the worst part of the whole thing, was that I was waking up with a sense of doom. So I decided to stop for a couple of days, go see my colleagues in the hospital. And because I was studying there, I knew the best specialists. So I went to a gastroenterologist, an allergist, and a psychiatrist. And at the end of a couple of days, they very solemnly gave me 3 diagnoses: irritable bowel syndrome, severe allergies, and severe depression. And they gave me 7 prescription medications. By the time I got home and I was looking at the medications, I had these 2 big aha moments. And one was that I didn't want to live that way, taking 7 pills, some of them 2-3 times a day in order to function. And the second one was that I didn't want to treat my patients that way either, because that's exactly what medicine had really boiled down to. A few minutes of visit in the office, a couple of prescriptions to cover your bases in case they sue you, right? And everybody goes their own way. So I took some time off after graduating as a cardiologist, and I ended up in a monastery in India, where I went to study meditation, but I ended up really learning so much more, because I was exposed there to functional medicine, to Ayurvedic medicine doctors, to Chinese medicine doctors, to chiropractors, naturopaths, hands-on healers, massage therapists, meditation instructors, all of which worked together with me in almost in a circle. We used to put the patient amongst us in a circle, and everybody would ask their questions, and then everybody would give their opinion of what they would do according to the tradition they came from. And I was able to witness the power of all these modalities. And without even knowing it, I was kind of directing a integrative medicine practice, right? It wasn't called that way at that time. But on my way back to the United States, even though my allergies, irritable bowel syndrome, and depression had benefited from my time over there, and the food over there, which was mostly vegan and cooked with love, and the meditation and the peace for there. But as soon as I came back and I started working in hospitals and eating again from hospital cafeterias, no time between beeper calls and nights on call. So I started getting sick again. And in fact, my problems came back with a vengeance. And it was about that time when I discovered, I stumbled upon the practices and concepts of cleansing and detoxification. And I was not only able to completely resolve all my problems for which Western modern allopathic medicine had given me 7 prescription medications, not even to reverse the problem, but to kill the symptoms, right? Mask the symptoms. So I was so blown away. And this was in a little spa in Palm Springs that people knew from all over the world, but it's not making a big dent, right? So I was so interested in what had happened to me that I became a really avid reader and researcher on everything that has to do with cleansing and detoxification, which are 2 words that are a little bit misused these days. But we can talk about that later. In any case, that took me to find the Institute for Functional Medicine, which is really the way that I understood the biochemical and physiological underpinnings of what I was looking at the beginning, seemingly magic or hokey pokey. I realized that even though I hadn't learned those things in medical school in a way to interpret all those benefits I was seeing, it was just because I wasn't thinking it in the correct way, because I had learned in medical school about the kidney, about the liver, about the lungs, about the skin, all these organs. And then people went and became a specialist for the kidney and a specialist for the liver and a specialist for but nobody really put everything together, the liver, the kidneys, the skin, the gut, as components of this system that the body has, which is the detoxification system. So I became incredibly interested, and I started reading, studying, trying things on myself, and then trying things on my friends, family, and then my patients. That's how I ended up developing a very simple, user-friendly program called the Clean Program, which is now known all over the world. The book has been translated to 23 languages, and people that practice this program, this way of detoxification, which is based on functional medicine, get incredible results. Recently, I added principles from Ayurvedic medicine and intermittent fasting to my programs, which made them even more intense and more beneficial in a way.
Amazing. So you've obviously had your own personal breakdown and a breakthrough journey. And, right now in the world with this COVID and this big, massive reset that humanity is experiencing, what breakthrough is possible right now? What are you feeling in your life that's happening and in your community that you see?
We always end up finding what we look for in general, but we only look for what we know. So we are all now really laser focused on the COVID, SARS-CoV-2, or the virus that causes the COVID-19 disease and the pandemia. And I hear speaking about it as the enemy and this invisible enemy and the war, and so we're focusing on that, right? But that is like focusing on the bullet in a war. You can't focus on the bullet. You cannot even focus on the soldier that's shooting it. You have to focus on the big picture of what's happening socially, culturally, historically, in order to see how these wars can be avoided, or seemingly, wars. Nature is incredibly intelligent, and it doesn't do things by mistake, right? So for example, one of the ideas that I really liked hearing recently was that the earth, when weeds start growing, we kill the weeds, right? But the weeds are really a way in which nature finds how to regenerate the soil, because the weeds eat bad stuff and they're tough, but eventually they die off and they become part of the soil themselves, right? And all the nutrients that they accumulated. So weeds are not the enemy, and we don't have to kill them. We just have to make the conditions for nature not to need this healing growth of herbs that at the moment it's happening. It looks like it's a problem, right? But if you went there and left it alone and went there a few years later, we'll see that, you know, the same plants that were growing before, like let's say a fire or chopping off of a whole forest, right? The weeds come in, they prepare the soil, and then the whole matrix is reborn. So focusing on the virus right now is kind of making us miss the opportunity to look at the whole of nature and what is it that's happening. Why this imbalance that allowed now this virus, which, you know, I'm not so sure that it's a new virus. There's thousands of viruses out there that we don't know. Yeah, it's new in its way of spreading amongst humans, right? But if you look at all the things that end up in this pandemic, like for example, the wet meat markets in China, and the fact that we are crossing boundaries that nature had put there to protect itself, and by putting all these animals together that should have never been together to begin with, we may have created this jump of species from bat to pangolin or snake and then to human, right? And the other possibility is that it was, you know, something that came out of a laboratory, right? But in either case, what's the common denominator for both? Is that we are tampering with nature. We are going against it. We are difficulting nature's evolution, right? But the problem is that we are a very tiny thing in nature's power, and eventually it's just gonna eat us up, right? It's gonna regenerate the biodiversity needed for nature to really thrive by dissolving somehow and reabsorbing this species that is acting up for some reason, changing the conditions, which will end up really killing ourselves, right?
Amazing. It's so true. When you think about it, it's like, you know, when you're individually, when you're sick, you have a rest, right? You go and you take some time in bed, you stay home. So it's almost like the sort of collective spirit of humanity has been so unwell that the whole of humanity is now having a rest at home and having some time off. And it's evident to see that how much regeneration and how quickly the earth has responded. I mean, that's been sort of a profound observation for all of us. But from your perspective as a doctor and someone who's really working on cleaning the individual from the inside out in a lot of ways, which also elevates the spirit and the emotion. I mean, I know so many people who have been on the clean program who have not just felt good physically, but there's been this emotional recharge and this physics, this sort of spiritual in a lot of ways recharge of wellness within themselves. So do you think that there's a possibility now for the whole planet to move towards that way after this reset?
I think there's a possibility always, and I think that there's events that may facilitate depending on how we react to them, right? And this is one of those type of events that has the power to change things cataclysmically, as it's already been happening, right? So now you will see the breakdown of our financial matrix, right? Our work, employment benefit, our healthcare system. Everything is kind of like being revealed to be so very weak. Just 2 months ago, people were talking about this country, about the most powerful country, and it's never been better, and the economy is so good, and the people that look at that in order to measure success, and then boom, 2 months later, not 2 months later, a few days later, but it's getting worse and worse. And I think that what we need to do is go along with it and start allowing the collapse of all the mental structures, conceptual structures, ideological structures that ended up building this machinery that is now collapsing, right? So yeah, we do have the opportunity, and there's a lot of people talking about this, and there's a lot of movement towards that end, right? And you uplift being part of that, and you know, we recently, you and I were in the International Yoga Festival where all really that was talked about is how do we ourselves enter a state, right, that can be shared and lived in a planetary level, right? And that is the ultimate possibility now. But yes, there's contraction now, there's pain. You know, it's like we've been stopped right on the tracks. It's like we were running a marathon or a sprint race, and then both our legs were broken, right? So now we gotta go on in a wheelchair and create the conditions and allow for the healing to happen. But it's very difficult. This is billions of people around the world. How do you feed everybody? I mean, we are living in a very challenging time, full of opportunities, but also hard work ahead.
Yeah, it's like, how do we really inspire in these times, like this sense of hope and this sense of, you know, like, yeah, I'd like to hear from you a little bit deeper. Like, what would you consider some of the sort of pathways if you were going to, okay, right now to the global world who are listening in, what would be the simple pathways for someone to follow?
So, you know, the most important thing, in my opinion, I think, is going and looking directly at the problem in the eyes, right? And the biggest problem, the thing that's underlying all of these collapsing systems, right, is this idea that we have departed from the ways of nature. We are not really in alignment and not respecting the laws of nature, and therefore we're paying the price, right? So apply that to anything. Apply that to the way we eat, right? So how are we designed by nature to eat? This is an interesting question, because if we want to know how nature designed tigers to eat, we're not going to go to the zoo. We're going to go to the jungle or wherever the tigers live, right? And we're going to hide and spy on them and put cameras and then observe what they do, right? In the zoo, it's different. People give them whatever they want, and I mean, they try to emulate what's happening in the jungle, but it cannot happen like that, because part of what nature designed is to these animals to go catch their prey. So all the exercise involved, and right, so it's never going to be the same. So, but the problem with humans is that we don't have humans living in nature as nature designed them to live, to go spy on them. There's none left. All the ones that we've been conquering and educating and enlightening, right? So and so we don't have the example, but we do have an example, or we are more sure about what not to do, right? So you start with what not to do. What not to do according to nature? Don't eat stuff that's edible. Eat food just like nature provides. There's so much available. There's so much in terms of variety and flavors and even medicinal effects of those foods, right? Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food, which was something that Socrates said thousands of years ago. So when you apply this concept of realigning yourself with nature to food, that's what happens. You know, you end up eating real foods, organic, of course, because nature didn't invent insecticides and pesticides. In season, local mostly, right? Not eating too much, because nature did not design any animal to be eating all day long. All animals take take times between meals, right? And many of those times are imposed by nature because they really, that's the time that it takes them to find the next meal from the last one they ate, right? So eating as nature designed them to eat is hard, but not eating as nature did not design us to eat is easy, right? And therefore, when you take away all the food-like products, all the things that are made in a plant, not that are plants, but made in a plant, just by doing that, I think health on the planet would go to a whole different level, right? As simple as that. The concept, the implementation would be very, very difficult, right? So anyways, when you apply that to the way you do agriculture, right? And then you get into regenerative agriculture, biodynamic farming, without the use of pesticides and insecticides. How? By respecting the laws of nature. So one of the laws of nature, for example, is this idea that nature thrives and is always creating biodiversity. It needs to express itself in so many ways, right? But that expression ends up also creating this balance, right? And when that biodiversity starts crumbling in terms of, you know, either extinction of species, or for example, artificially, when you you know you extract all plants from a field and then only plant one type of plant, this monoculture um, uh, situations, right? Like for example, corn or wheat, right? These miles and miles and miles of only one species of plant becomes very weak because the biodiversity is lost. And then because becomes very weak, it's exposed to invaders and therefore needs pesticides and insecticides, right? And that's how the circle keeps going and going. And it's very difficult to break it because each one of these pesticides or insecticides, or each one of these crops that we're planting and harvesting and eating, um, is an entire industry with hundreds of thousands of jobs. And so how do you suddenly shift this? Right? But that difficulty is what gets so many excited about the possibilities and the challenge to human creativity and and desire for survival.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, tell me, you used a word that I'm not familiar with, functional medicine. Can you share a little bit about what that means briefly?
Yeah. So about between 20 and 30 years ago, I don't know exactly, there was this man who was a student of Linus Pauling, the scientist that discovered vitamin C, Nobel Prize. And this student, Jeffrey Bland, started thinking that even though science and Western modern medicine is great and with its discoveries, the problem that he was seeing, that it was great for acute problems, like if you break a bone or if you have a stroke, you go and they fix you, right? But if it's a chronic problem, it's not so effective. So, for example, 90% of the problems that humanity suffers from are chronic problems. Modern medicine is great for acute problems. Chronic problems treated with chemotherapy and surgery don't really improve. So, in that way, Jeffrey Bland thought that there needed to be a rethinking and restructuring of the way that one's think about health and therefore medicine, right? And he brought the systems thinking and the functions thinking. So every system has a different function. Every function is needed for the full optimal health and operating of each organism. And then all the functions also have its precursors and the way they interact with each other, right? So functional medicine is really looking at the root cause of why dysfunction happens. And then when you correct the root cause, then the interventions at the end of the cascade are not needed, because you actually restoring your body's natural ability to heal itself.
Amazing. Amazing.
So it's just an easier way to think about it is functional medicine is what happens when regular doctors are taught to think like Ayurvedic medicine doctor or
Okay.
naturopaths.
So understanding the whole holistic approach. Love it.
Yes.
Dr. Alejandro, I just want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to ask you one last question, because it's so fascinating. This is almost like what's really needed now is this understanding that you're holding for, that you've devoted your life to. But name one of the gems that you've experienced through this moment, what we're calling social isolation.
For me, it was the connection with my children.
Beautiful.
I've always given my children lots of attention. I've taken them to school. I go to other, acts or performances. I go to the birthday parties. But this idea of just being with them all day long for weeks in a row and having to do everything with them and sometimes for them or teach them has been incredible for me. But I'm one of the lucky ones that can work from home. So I realize that stress is not part of my experience, which would rob me from experiencing this other thing that I'm talking about. Yeah, but there's all kinds of balances, right? But before we go, Chris, I just wanted to make sure that people understand that even though it's all so complicated. Look, I have my my daily report here of everything that's being used and all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the phytonutrients, everything that's happening with the COVID and all the discoveries, right? But even though that can be a little bit confusing, the most important things and effective things that you can do is all free. They're all free, and they're available to you all the time. Moderate exercise, moving around, sleeping, having good night's sleep is very, very important for the immune system and many other things, right? Spending time in the outside air, there's the outdoor air effect, which in the last pandemic and the Spanish flu, in Paris, they started taking as an overflow because the hospitals were too full. They started putting people outside under just tented roofs, right? And those people started getting better because they were just exposed to the open air. So the open air factor is important. And meditation is always there. It's free. You can do it anytime. And then of course immunity. Other than that, moving, meditating, praying, breathing fresh air, exposing yourself to the sun, having good intimate time with your friends and families, right? Other than that, your immunity starts in the kitchen. And the most important thing that you can do is eat real food, not food-like products. With those two things, humanity can be saved, just simply like that. And that's why I want to drill into people's heads.
Amazing.
Right. Before you start getting confused with all the products out there, do these simple things as you learn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if people in our global community want to know a little bit more about you, where would they go?
Instagram is Dr. Alejandro Junger, altogether, Dr. Alejandro Junger, Junger. I'm on Facebook, cleanprogram.com is my company where we offer.
We'll provide the links for people as well.
So. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time. This has been incredibly revealing and so informational, and just a pleasure, always a pleasure to just spend some time with you.
I love spending time with you, Chris, even if it's on Zoom. So anytime.
Yeah, well, we'll see you soon. Much love.
Hope to see you soon in person.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Chris.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Namaste.
Welcome
to the Global Days of Unity.
From the minute that I heard about Global Days of Unity, I understood that it was the thing for this time. The incredible coming together of people, music, song, prayer, that it's like a massive infusion of energy into consciousness, into the world. And what I love about it is it's completely accessible by anyone, anywhere. And let's create that togetherness and that cohesion third weekend of every month.
Deep inhale to the center.
Today at this session, we have a wonderful panel, wonderful presenters.
It brings together a unity that I don't think has ever really truly been done correctly. And just learning about the initiative makes my heart warm.
Put our thought into it, we put intention into it, it can just be so powerful and can become so huge and have such a big impact.
I think what inspires me the most about the Global Days of Unity initiative is the experimental aspect of it, right? Like, this thing has never been done before. We've tried so many different things. We haven't tried people coming together with a sense of intention and joy. Let's try something new. Let's see what humanity can be. And I'm excited about that possibility.
If we send out love, then the world responds with love. So in Global Days of Unity, just imagine the consequence of a large number of people sending out wonderful thoughts of love, peace, and harmony, because we can change this planet just by the thinking of those wonderful thoughts. And in community, we re-empower each other, but we can also empower the world.
I want to invite you
The third weekend of every month.
Let us be together.
to the Global Days of Unity.
Welcome home.